In this video, I'll show you how to shave your dog, demonstrating on Phoenix, who's a schnoodle, which is a Schnauzer Poodle mix. Today I'll be shaving Phoenix using my Heineken clippers fitted with a 7F blade. Before clipping, I've given Phoenix a bath and thoroughly blow dried her hair using my pet dryer. As you can see, her fur is clean, straight and fluffy, which is exactly how you want it before clipping. A clean, dry coat helps the clippers glide smoothly and gives a much more even finish. If you'd like to learn how to prepare your dog's coat before clipping, I'll leave a link in the description below to a video I've made which takes you through how to brush, pre-clip, bath, and dry your dog's coat before clipping it. For today's groom, I've chosen a 7F blade. This blade leaves the coat at a 3.2mm or an eighth of an inch length, making it my go-to choice for summer clips, especially for dogs with heavily matted coats. Because it clips the fur quite short, it can easily get underneath the mats and tangles, making the grooming process much easier and more comfortable for your dog. The 7F blade is the shortest blade I regularly use. The next length up is the 5F blade, which leaves the coat a little bit longer at 6.4mm or a quarter of an inch. If you're unsure which blade length is right for your dog, I've made a video comparing the different clipper blade lengths. In this video, I demonstrate each blade on my dog's Soda so you can clearly see the difference in coat length. I'll link to this video in the description below. I like to shave a dog's back first, so I've attached a slip lead to the top of my grooming table to keep Phoenix from moving around too much, and I've used a quick release knot just in case she jumps off the table. I've brushed up her fur against the grain using my slicker brush, and then starting from the neck, I'm gliding the clippers down Phoenix's back, following the curves of her body all the way down to just above the base of her tail. You can do this either with your dog standing or sitting. I prefer them sitting because it stretches their skin a bit more, which means you'll get an even shorter trim. And it also gives them a bit of a rest before you move on to other areas of their body where you'd rather they stand. Now in grooming, what you do once you do twice, so I'll brush up the fur again using my slicker brush and glide the clippers down Phoenix's back. You go over the same section 2 or 3 times until you notice the clippers aren't trimming any more fur, which means the coat has been trimmed at an even length. Now that her back is done, I need to stand her up so I can trim her sides. Now I'll demonstrate on one side and you can do the other side on your own. You might need a belly sling to prevent your dog from sitting. I'll use one a little later on in the video, or you can try supporting the belly like I am now by resting your hand at the bottom of their rib cage. So I've brushed up the fur with my slicker brush, and now I'm gliding the clippers down her rib cage and scooping that fur against my other hand at the bottom of the rib cage. Now be very careful of the loose skin here between her belly and her back leg because you can very easily cut it with your clippers. So hold your fingers behind the skin and then carefully glide the clippers over it while scooping that fur away. You'll notice Phoenix has a fatty lump here, so I'll be very careful with my clippers to not accidentally nick the skin while I shave over the lump and around the lump. Grooming the belly can be a little bit awkward because it is a bit hard to reach with the clippers. The easiest way to reach the belly is by lifting up the front leg, then run your clippers from the chest to the groin and behind the arm. You'll need to repeat this on the other side of the dog to reach the rest of the fur. Phoenix will try and sit when I attempt to shave her bum, so I'll have to use a belly strap to prevent her from sitting. I attach the strap to the top of my grooming table, I pass it under her belly, and then I'll clip in the straps. I'll then adjust the straps to make sure it's tight enough and her feet aren't lifted off the table. Now I'll start shaving her bum area. So I lift up her tail and run the clippers over her bum. So there's a few mats here which I can't get the clippers underneath, so I'll change the blade to a 10 clipper blade, which shaves at a shorter length of 1.5mm or 1/16 of an inch. There we go, that's worked a lot better. So once I've got these mats out, I'll also run the clippers over a bum hole just to get rid of any dry poo that might be there. Okay, now that's been done, I'll change my blade back to a 7F blade to finish shaving the rest of her bum. I'll link to a more detailed video below in the description on how to groom your dog's bum. Next, I like to shave the back legs. So to save time, I'll show you how to shave one back leg and you can repeat the process on the other side. Now the fur has been brushed up using my slicker brush, and now I'm just gliding the clippers down the side of her leg. You'll notice I'm holding the inside of her leg. That's to help support her leg and keep it still, but it's also a habit to keep her tail out of the way so I don't accidentally trim it. However, it doesn't really matter in this case since we'll be shaving all of her fur. The belly strap might be covering some of her fur, so gently push it out of the way so you can shave the fur beneath it. Now to shave down the front of the leg, I like to hold the leg up slightly and rotate it towards me a little bit so I can reach some of the inside leg fur. I then run the clippers down to her toes. I'll run them a couple of times down the front of her leg and then down the side of her leg. And I'll do this a couple more times until no more fur is being shaved off. Next, holding her leg just above the hock, I run the clippers down the back of her leg from the hock to the bottom of the leg. There is a tendon just above the hock, so you never run the clippers directly down the back of the top half of the leg, because if they kick up their leg you can easily cut the tendon. So instead, when shaving the top of the back of the leg, sweep the clippers across the back of the leg towards the bum. To shave the fur on the inside of the leg, first brush up the fur using your slicker brush, and then the trick is to lift up the opposite leg so they can't kick up the leg you're grooming. Lifting up the leg also gives you room to get your clippers in there to trim the fur from the top of the thigh down to the bottom of the leg. You can see Phoenix is dancing around a little bit, so I'll just wait for her to be still and then I'll continue to trim down her leg. Now it's time to trim the fur on the top of her paw, so I lift up her foot at the hock and then using my slicker brush, I brush up the fur against the grain. Brushing up the fur will pull out any fur that's hiding in between her toes, and then I use my curved scissors to trim across the top of the paw in a curved motion, trimming any fur that's sticking out. What you do once you do twice, so I'll brush up the fur again with my slicker brush and go over and trim any long fur that's sticking out, making sure I blend the length of the fur on her paw with the length of the fur on her leg. Now it's time to use my straight scissors to trim any fur that I've missed with the clippers. So I brush up the fur using my slicker brush, and then I trim any fur that's sticking out. If you're unsure where your dog's skin is at any time, just use your fingers to check before using your scissors. I angle my scissors downwards away from the body so I make sure I don't accidentally cut Phoenix if she suddenly moves. I'll do this again on the front of her leg, so I'll brush up with my slicker brush, and then using my straight scissors, I'll angle them down towards the table and trim the fur following down her leg. And lastly, I lift up her leg at the hock, I'll brush up using my slicker brush, and then I'll trim the remainder of the fur with my straight scissors. Next it's time to shave the fur between her paw pads, so I'll use my mini trimmers and I'll run them across the top of her paw pads and scoop the fur out between the two big gaps between the large paw pad and the smaller ones. Then I'll trim the fur between the nails and the smaller pads. I'll link to a more in-depth video in the description below on how to remove the fur between your dog's paws. While Phoenix is still in the belly strap, I'll shave her tail, because if I try to do this when she's not in the belly strap, she'll try and sit down on me. So first I brush up her tail with the slicker brush, and then I run the clippers down her tail, starting from the base of the tail to the tip of the tail. And you continue to do this all around the tail. A tip I can give you is to keep a chunk of fur on the tip of the tail to hold on to while you shave the rest of the tail. Otherwise, it can be difficult to hold on to the tail. Once you have shaved the majority of fur off using your clippers, you can switch over to your straight scissors to finish trimming the remaining fur. First, brush up the fur using your slicker brush, and then using your straight scissors, very carefully trim the long strands of fur sticking out. The last step to finish off the tail is to trim the chunk of fur off the tip. When doing this, hold your fingers on the tip of the tailbone so you don't accidentally cut the tail. Now I'll remove the belly strap so I can shave her groin area. I'll use my 10 blade to shave her groin, so I'll swap out my 7F blade to this 10 blade here. And I'll link to a more detailed video in the video description below on how to shave the groin area, where I'll demonstrate on both a female and a male dog. But essentially I'll shave Phoenix from where you think she has a belly button, all the way down to her private parts. Next I lift her legs so I can shave from the top of her inner thighs towards her tummy. You'll need to go around to the other side of your dog and repeat this with the other leg, but to save time I'll just show you how to shave this side. With small dogs like Phoenix, it can be difficult to get your clippers into a few hard to reach places. So I'll shave what I can with the clippers, and then I'll use my mini trimmers to get into those hard to reach places. Next I'll move on to Phoenix's shoulder and front leg. I'll brush up the fur with my slicker brush, and then I'll use my clippers with the 7F blade back on, and I'll glide the clippers from the top of her shoulder down her leg. Now Phoenix doesn't usually let me use clippers on her front legs. I usually just use my scissors, but I'll try and demonstrate how to use clippers on her just as much as she lets me. I very lightly run the clippers down the back of her leg, and then down the side of her leg. And then to give her a quick break, I'll move onto her shoulder and neck area and glide the clippers down towards her leg. When shaving the front legs, what you aim to do is lift the leg so you can shave the inside of the leg, and then you'll shave the outside of the leg, the front of the leg, and then the back of the leg. Now Phoenix isn't really enjoying this, so I'm going to move on to shaving her armpit. Armpits can get very matted from the friction of walking, so you really need to shave them. I use my mini trimmers to do this. All you need to do is lift up the arm and scoop out any mats. I'll link to a more detailed video in the description below on how to shave your dog's armpits. Now I'll just finish shaving this patch of fur on her neck. See how I'm just lifting her neck to stretch her skin, and then I'm just gliding the clippers down towards her leg. Now I'll continue with her leg, but since she's had enough of the clippers, I'll continue with my straight scissors. I brush up the fur with my slicker brush, and then I trim with my scissors along the side of the paw, the top of the paw, and the other side of the paw. I'll brush up the fur again with my slicker brush, and this will lift up any fur that's hiding in between the toes, and then I'll trim the fur using my curved scissors. I'll also trim any fur that's sticking out while her paw is flat on the table. And what you do once, you do twice, so I'll brush up the fur on her paw using my slicker brush and trim any fur that's sticking out. Next, using my straight scissors again, I'll trim any fur between the pad on the back of her leg and the bottom of her paw. Now if you can't see the pad, use your fingers to feel for it so you don't accidentally cut it. Next I'll shave the paw the same way I shaved her back paw. I'll run my mini trimmers across the top of the paw pads, and then I'll scoop the fur out of the two big gaps between the large paw pad and the smaller ones. Now it's time to shave the neck. So first I lift up Phoenix's chin and glide the clippers down her neck. It's really important to keep your dog's chin lifted so any skin folds on the neck are stretched, because they can easily get caught in the clippers. I'll start just under her chin and work my way down her neck. Now there's a couple of mats here that are pulling on her skin, so I'll come back to this section. Next I'll run the clippers from the back of her head down the back of her neck. Then holding back her ear, I shave just under her ear leather, down her neck. Then I'll move to the top of her head and shave. I run the clippers from just above her eyes to the back of her head, being very careful of her eyes. I'll then rest her ear leather on my hand while I shave down the top of her ear. Next I'll shave down the side of her face with the clippers between her eye and her ear, all the way down to her neck. Then I'll shave down her muzzle while I hold the fur underneath her chin. Then I shave under her chin, down towards her neck. I hold her around the muzzle so I can move her head so I can reach to the other side of her neck. Then I hold the fur under her chin and finish shaving down the side of her muzzle. I then hold back her ear and shave any fur I've missed down the side of her face. Phoenix is a schnoodle, which is a poodle and schnauzer mix. Her ears are small like a schnauzer, so I hold her ear leather while I shave the inside of her ear. Now some dogs won't like the noise of the clippers so close to their ears, so if that's the case, just use your scissors. To finish off the ears, I hold the ear leather and using my straight scissors, I'll trim any fur that's longer than the ear leather. Now make sure you hold the end of the ear leather so you don't accidentally cut it. I'll link to a video below in the description to a more in-depth video on how to trim your dog's ears. Now I'll just repeat the process on the other side of her face. Next I'll trim her fringe. So first I'll use my comb to brush her fringe fur over her eyes, and then I'll use my curved scissors to trim her fringe across the top of her head in the shape of a visor. I'll do this by holding her by the muzzle so I can move her head where I want it. Next I'll lift up the fur in the corner of her eyes, and using my straight scissors I'll trim any fur that's sticking out. Lastly, I'll trim any fur that's sticking out around her mouth. First I'll use my comb to pull up any fur, and then I'll also pull out any fur that she's got stuck in her mouth. It's usually that stained brown fur. And then I'll use my curved scissors to trim any fur around her mouth and snout. You'll notice I'm holding her around the muzzle. That's to keep her mouth closed because I don't want to stick her tongue out while I've got scissors around her mouth. And there you have it, Phoenix's shave is now finished. All she needs is a spritz of doggy cologne and her summer cut is complete. As you can see from her before photo, Phoenix now looks really fresh, she looks a lot neater, and now you can see her beautiful eyes. Thanks for watching.